It seems that you can hardly go to an internet news site, open a newspaper, or turn on a television without seeing a story on bullying. Bullying presents social, moral, legal, and economic challenges to you and your school. Some have even referred to bullying in its many variants as the new school violence.
Bullying is basically when someone repeatedly harasses, intimidates, threatens, or otherwise makes life miserable for someone. In most definitions of bullying, there's a power differential. The bully has power over the target or the victim. Repetition is an important characteristic in bullying and cyberbullying, because if I'm picked on once or assaulted just one time, that's different than if it happens repeatedly, weekly, monthly, every other day.
In gym, I was bullied by a teacher repetitively. We had a gym teacher who used to get behind me on the track with the whip of his whistle and whip my butt, and he would ridicule me, and it hurt.
I was bullied growing up, and on a couple of different occasions, and those are situations that you never forget.
The idea of bullying is not anything new. I would argue that it's been around since the beginning of time.
Maybe a year ago, I was introduced to a woman in her 70s, and in the course of the introduction, the person told him what I do. I do the bullying classes, and immediately, she talked about when she was 5 years old in kindergarten being bullied on the bus. It stays with you.
It does stay with you, and with consequences. Some may last a lifetime. Here are some of the ways bullying affects the victims.
160,000 children miss school every year in our country because of bullying.
Bullying has been shown to be related to academic problems, school problems, problems in the community as far as behavior, also emotional and psychological problems, in addition to kind of the physical problems associated with being assaulted.
2 years of being bullied and stuff like that. I actually, 8th grade, I started getting really angry and lashing out at people, and not really bullying them with my words, but definitely with my actions and stuff.
I don't think a lot of people realize that there are long-term negative consequences associated with bullying. That's why it is important for us to keep a lookout on any kind of bullying behavior and also look for signs that someone is being bullied. That last item can be tricky, especially considering what masters of deception kids can be. There are warning signs, especially any type of change in personality or behavior. Keep a lookout for these other signs. If you can, pay attention to the child's appearance. Are their clothes damaged in any manner? Do they have cuts or bruises, and are they trying to hide them? Are they keeping to themselves? Have they stopped hanging out with their friends? Have they lost interest in schoolwork? And is there a drop-off in their grades? Bullying has evolved considerably from those pushed into the locker days, as we will see.
Bullying isn't just physical. Some people bully with words, and they use words as a weapon.
Verbal bullying is probably a day in, day out experience for, I would guess, maybe a third of kids. More so for certain kids, but it's almost unavoidable. Just kids are teased about everything, and teasing is viewed as a form of bullying if it's not done with your really good friends.
They had been planning how to ruin me for a while, and they'd stolen my phone and gone through my texts and built up a lot of stuff against me, and they actually waited for me one day after cheerleading, and I got in the locker room and they were all waiting for me there, and they cornered me and started screaming at me, and it was pretty traumatic.
And I'm like, how in the world did you break your thumb? She goes, well, I was reaching for a door and somebody hit into it. Well, come to find out, no, a group of girls, as she reached for the door, they kicked it, and it was intentional. They kind of watched her through the glass and realized that she was there, and it was a way to try to get her to go down the hallway a different direction.
They would gang up on certain people that they didn't like. I had a friend, and they all started talking about her behind her back, and then at the same point in time, they all threw their pencils at her. And it sounds not like, it doesn't sound that bad, but it is. And she ended up transferring the next day because she was so traumatized by it.
There are some kids who are so good verbally that they will leave you beat up and bruised when they're finished with you. Or their personality is such that they're analytical and they're verbal. So they think so quickly, and then they're able to articulate their thoughts. And while another student may be analytical as well, but be slower in the communication aspect, and so they never really had the opportunity to share their thoughts. So they're bullied by the other individual.
For obvious reasons, we focus most of our attention upon the victim of bullying. But as you will see, the bully deserves attention as well.
Bullying is rewarding for the bully. It gives them power, it gives them, in a sense, a sort of prestige.
A lot of times the individual doing the bullying has either been bullied, have issues that are connected to a home environment, where there's frustration, there may be degrees of anger that they haven't had a chance to deal with.
And we know with traditional bullying that kids who, if we don't intervene with them, they're more likely to end up in juvenile correction facilities. So,
it turns out that any form of antisocial negative behavior increases your own risk, the risk of the aggressor, the risk of the perpetrator. And in fact, when it comes to victimization in general, studies were done by the Crimes Against Children Research Center in 2005 that found that a person who was aggressive in a negative way more than doubled his or her risk of being victimized. So if you have no other reason to be nice to people, be nice to people because it's better for you.
If you needed a reason to stop the cycle of bullying, the potential lifelong adverse effects that the bullies are subject to provide some motivation. Here are a few signs that you should look for if you suspect that a child may be involved in bullying. Does the child seem argumentative? Do they act impulsively, have little or no regard for rules and regulations? Do they have a tendency to dominate their friends? Do they seem depressed, not interested in school or schoolwork, views violence and aggression as positive behaviors? The legal ramifications of ignoring bullying in your school are considerable, and they should give you pause. There are more than just moral reasons to stop bullying.
Litigation is not just about having a school that is named in a lawsuit. Now the attorneys are naming teachers, staff members, school board members, anyone in the educational food chain.
Educators have a duty of maintaining a safe learning environment. And if there is a disruption caused by a student who is known to the educator, and if the nature of the disruption that targets another student is known to the educator has a duty to bring a reasonable response to intervene to that disruption. These are rules that have been around for decades.
I don't think any principal is going to ignore bullying for very much longer. I just don't see how they can. For economic reasons, their school boards should be saying, you can't do this. Whether they respond effectively or not is a different issue, but I doubt they'll be ignoring it.
The severity of the issue has gotten so big that in October 2010, the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights contacted all schools in order to reinforce the message that some types of student misconduct may trigger responsibilities for the school under one or more of the following federal anti-discrimination laws. Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, and the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990.
It was a learned document that laid out in detail the federal laws, whether they're discrimination, and handicap, all of those different laws that protect students, and also talked about how educators should respond, what their requirements are, what they needed to do from the U.S. Department of Education's perspective.
Well, there are several statutes, both federal and state, that have now been implemented on the subject of bullying. But most of those statutes, when you look at them, are simply ways of encouraging educators to use the authority that they've always had in this regard. For example, on the federal side, Title IX, which is a federal funding statute, awards funding to primary, secondary institutions of higher education, all with one enormous string attached, that they have a safe learning environment so that students are not being bullied, at least gender-motivated bullying. Now, Title IX was not initially passed in order to balance sports teams at K through 12 and institutions of higher ed. It was designed to level the climatic playing field so that women and men's opportunities were not diminished because they are women and men. And it is a perfect anti-bullying statute and is being asserted in liability cases in exactly that way.
It is important to understand that failure to reasonably address bullying on your school campus can lead to considerable legal and financial consequences. We recommend that you consult your school or district's legal counsel.
For more information on dealing with bullying and cyberbullying, please log on to www.mysafeschools.org.